Some people hold the opinion that basically almost everyone can benefit from taking a GLP-1 agonist in their lifetime. At the same time, news outlets are reporting on an alleged Ozempic lawsuit. Some very severe, permanent side effects have been observed in some patients, and these risks were apparently not presented adequately to the public. These very contrasting effects raise the question, what is the reality of GLP-1 medications? Which is why today we're discussing GLP-1 and GLP-1 agonists in depth on the channel. We're going to be covering what GLP-1 actually is. Is there a way that our body can produce more GLP-1 naturally, so you don't have to take a medication? What do GLP-1 agonists actually do? And what are the real known side effects as of today? This is a developing field of research. There is more and more information coming out. So what I'm going to be saying about this is definitely not going to be the end of the topic. All of the information that I'm going to present is scientifically backed, and all of the resources are going to be linked down in the description below. Enough rambling, let's get right into the video. GLP-1 is a part of the hormones that regulate our energy balance and our appetite. It is being released mainly in the gut and also in very small proportions in the brainstem, but mainly in the gut. The so-called L cells in the gut produce GLP-1, and they are found in larger amounts in the distal part of the intestine towards the colon, so not in the beginning of the small intestine. GLP-1 first became a topic of discussion back in the 1960s when patients were being administered glucose orally, so with the food. The insulin response would be higher compared to if there was glucose solution injected directly into their bloodstream. So the researchers then suspected that there must be another thing that comes into play, something being released in the gut in a response to ingesting food that helps boost the insulin response. This was then called the incretin effects, and GLP-1 would be first known as the so-called incretin factor. However, GLP-1 is so much more than insulin regulation. It exerts its function both in the gut and also in the brain, and this dual action makes it a very attractive target for the development of pharmacological therapies. So how does GLP-1 actually work? As already said, GLP-1 functions on two levels, both in the gut and in the brain. The first thing that it does is that it slows down your gastric emptying. So the food that you have ingested leaves your stomach more slowly and keeps you fuller for longer. This also helps with blood sugar regulation, since it takes longer for the sugar that's in here to reach the small intestine and then reach the bloodstream. So this helps not have these crazy blood sugar spikes that you would have in the absence of GLP-1. The thing is that the cells that release GLP-1 are in the distal part of the intestine. Therefore, the release of GLP-1 due to the food that you have ingested comes much later on than your mealtime. So the GLP-1 secreted by the L cells is not really the main factor that sends a quick signal for satiety. The way that this happens is that GLP-1, when it is being secreted, sends a signal to the vagus nerve. I cannot really draw intestines, so I didn't, but it sends a signal from the gut to the brain through this vagal nerve, and there the signal tells the brain that okay, it is time to stop eating. As I already mentioned, it is also being secreted in very small amounts in the brainstem. However, the GLP-1 that is being secreted in your gut cannot really reach your brain and the blood-brain barrier, mostly because its half-life is very short. A quick note from editing Clemmy here. I know that on the whiteboard it says that GLP-1 agonists can cross the blood-brain barrier, but this actually does not apply to every single one of them. For semaglutide, so Ozempic for example, it has not been demonstrated that it can readily cross the blood-brain barrier, while for other ones, such as I believe it was exenatide, it has been observed, so it depends on the type of GLP-1 agonist used. GLP-1's half-life is about 1 or 2 minutes, so by the time it would then reach your blood-brain barrier, it would have already been degraded by the enzymes in your body. The thing with GLP-1 GLP-1 agonists is that they have a much longer shelf life. You always hear that GLP-1 agonists come in a different form. For instance, Ozempic comes as a semaglutide, and this is because the sequence has been modified in a way that it can be more stable and it is not going to be rapidly degraded by the enzymes in your body. This is what makes GLP-1 agonists so special and why exogenous, external GLP-1 is quite different from the GLP-1 that you generate inside your body. As you have already noticed all around the internet, GLP-1 agonists are indeed quite effective when we're talking about weight loss, and the research, of course, also supports that. There was this trial called the Step 1 trial, which showed that after 68 weeks of treatment with GLP-1, the participants lost around 17% of their total body weight, which is a lot. However, there was also a 1-year follow-up after this 68 weeks period, and at that follow-up it was found that these people who had stopped taking GLP-1 agonists actually had regained around 2/3 of the weight that they have lost. All of the positive changes that were seen in a lot of different metabolic health markers such as blood triglycerides, also blood pressure, and a lot of different things. Almost all of them had returned to baseline, and it was as if they had never taken GLP-1 in the first place. Some scientists would put it that taking GLP-1 agonists is not really a cure, it is a long-term management strategy, which sounds probably very discouraging to a lot of people because it seems as if you stop taking this medication, you are going to suffer from a weight rebound. This is what might make it very unattractive, because once you start taking it, you might have to take it for your whole life if you want to maintain the results. It is very important to mention that these changes in body weight are primarily due to the reduction in appetite that these GLP-1 agonists cause, because they activate these receptors, send signal to the brain that you are full, so therefore you reduce your caloric intake. But in the end, it is the caloric restriction that leads to this weight loss. Therefore, if you stop taking GLP-1 agonists, these signals are going to be not there anymore, and you might go back to your previous eating habits and therefore regain the weight that you have lost. Your entire lifestyle throughout this process is also of huge importance. Some, including me, share the opinion that taking such a medication might be a great boost for you to start, especially considering the negative changes in hunger hormones, appetite hormones that people suffer if they try to lose weight by themselves. But if you do not implement any lifestyle changes while you're taking this medication, it would be very difficult for you to ever stop taking this medication. The thing that GLP-1 agonists essentially do is that they help you take control of your eating habits, but they do not boost your metabolism, they do not burn fat, they do none of those magical things that you might suspect that they're doing. It is also completely possible that you still overeat on these medications and you do not lose weight. Not everybody responds positively. A lot of people do, but not 100% of the people. However, if you are taking this medication and at the same time focus on improving your eating habits, focus on whole foods and limit ultra highly processed foods, combine all of this with sufficient physical activity, especially resistance training to preserve your muscle mass, it might be a lot easier for you to go on a lower dose in the future and maybe eventually even stop taking the medication. Some research papers have tried combining also exercise with taking GLP-1 agonists, and the best influence on the participants' health was found indeed in this combination group. Some participants were just exercising, some participants were doing both, and some were on placebo, and the best influences on abdominal adiposity, so the visceral fats around your organs that is very bad for inflammation and also for cardiovascular health, along with other markers of metabolic health, were all best influenced in this combination group. It is still a growing field of research, and I believe that in the future we're going to see more and more scientific papers that cover exactly this topic and more trials putting people exactly on those types of interventions. Some of the anecdotal side effects effects you see on tablets are also related to not implementing these lifestyle changes, but we're going to talk about this later. Because taking a medication your whole life is quite an unattractive thing for everyone, there has been an emerging market for supplements that prove to mimic the effects of GLP-1, and also more and more information is being spread around as to how can I naturally boost GLP-1. There are some things indeed that modestly can increase the production of GLP-1 in your body. However, the magnitude of the effects is nowhere as large as to when somebody takes an external GLP-1 medication. And you cannot expect the same effects by implementing a lifestyle change or by taking a supplement. This doesn't mean that these approaches might not help improve your metabolic health. It just means that the impact that it is going to have is definitely not going to be of the same scale as when taking Ozempic or Wegovy or any of the sorts. Some of these strategies include having a diet that is higher in protein. There has been some research that supports that ingesting larger amounts of protein helps with GLP-1 production in one's body and also helps boost satiety. Again, eating sufficient amounts of protein is something great that you can do for your health, especially if you're trying to lose weight and you are in a caloric restriction, because I have said it 100,000 times on this channel, it helps preserve your lean mass and sets you up for a better outcome in the long term, helps you maintain a good basal metabolic rate so that your metabolic engine does not slow down rapidly. Some natural compounds such as berberine have been thoroughly investigated for their impact on the gut microbiota and also on the management of blood sugar, on the insulin production in general. And while there is some research that supports all of this, a lot of the studies are done on mice and there is a lack of human research on this topic. This might not come as a shock to you, but mice are not exactly identical to humans and we do not know if the same effects would be observed in humans. That does not mean to say that there is no impact of berberine. However, I think it is a bit overrated when compared to GLP-1 agonists especially. Other things such as specific blends of citrus flavonoids or standardized Moro blood orange extracts, all of these things are an emerging market. A lot of food companies, chemical companies start developing these mixtures to be put in supplements. However, the data is very limited. At least to me, it seems more as of a cash grab with the rise in popularity of GLP-1 agonists than an actual strategy for you to implement and for it to be adequately effective. Now that you know that the magnitude of the effect is not going to be the same and that you cannot expect the same appetite suppression that you get with the actual weight loss medication, let's talk about the possible side effects that might occur if you decide to go on one of these medications. The most common ones include gastrointestinal issues, so that would mean nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, and constipation. All of these symptoms occur in a lot of the people who take these medications, but tend to decrease as one gets used to the dose, and if the dosage is then to be increased, then they return, but the body kind of adapts over time to these effects. As with every medication, there are also some less common but more severe side effects such as acute pancreatitis, gallbladder issues, also acute kidney problems, especially if you have been severely dehydrated due to the gastrointestinal side effects, and if you are about to have some type of operation that requires anesthesia. It is also of crucial importance to bring up the fact that you're taking a GLP-1 medication because of the delayed gastric emptying. This has some connection with the effectiveness or the dose of the anesthesia. I'm not quite sure, but it is something that was brought up in all of the sources that I found. Now let's talk briefly about the lawsuit. This is still ongoing. There have been emerging complaints from people that suffer from two very serious side effects. One of those is gastroparesis, which is stomach paralysis, and this seems to be a consequence of the effect that GLP-1 agonists have on gastric emptying and the function of the muscles of the stomach. The second very big and permanent side effect that is also the main focus of the lawsuit right now is vision loss and the condition called NION, which is non-arteritic anterior ischemic optic neuropathy, and results in vision loss usually in one eye. In the absence of Ozempic, it is sometimes observed in diabetic patients over the age of 50. This condition is irreversible, and you can see how patients who were taking Ozempic and were not aware of this, not common but possible side effects, might want to sue the company for that. This is why one of the sources I used proposed that always when talking to patients, the so-called 3 E's method should be employed, which refers to education of the patients about all of the possible risks and of course evaluating their medical history, escalation, gradual escalation of the dose and not putting somebody directly on a high dose of these medications, and also effective management of any negative symptoms and side effects that might occur in the process. Anything else that you see online regarding side effects of Ozempic, I'm referring to Ozempic face, Ozempic butt, Ozempic feet I saw the other day. All of those things are more the result of very rapid weight loss, and you would see the same types of effects if you, even without any weight loss medication, put yourself in a very severe caloric deficits. When a person does this to their own body, they usually lose large amounts of fat but also muscle mass at the same time, because if you are in such a large caloric deficit, you are probably not eating enough protein at the same time. A lot of people also do not change their lifestyle habits and do nothing to preserve the lean mass that they have, which is why you see the Ozempic butts as well, because you did nothing to preserve your glutes, so now they are technically gone. And the same goes for bone density loss. If you are being malnourished and you're eating less and also not the most nutritious foods, then these changes would not come as a surprise. Resistance training is known to benefit one's bone density, especially as age progresses. Ingesting enough nutrients such as calcium and vitamin D and also phosphorus is crucial for maintaining bone health. Therefore, the Ozempic is not the primary cause of these negative side effects. It is the way that you nourish your body what causes all of these things. In the same category, you could put also hair loss or thinnings of the hair, brittle nails, drier skin. There are so many things that you could put in this category. An effective strategy would maybe be to try and change their eating habits in the meantime while taking the medication. Try to preserve the lean mass that they already have by doing resistance training. The bigger problem that is emerging is that first, people who are already at a healthy weight start taking these medications just because they want to lose more weight. However, this medication was not originally intended for them, and there has not been any research on people of a healthy weight, so we do not know what the side effects on these people might be. At the same time, I saw a YouTube documentary the other day that now also teenagers are being prescribed these medications for weight loss, which is a very conflicting topic, and I'm not very positive about teenagers who are still in their development trying out these types of medications. Some of these children were prescribed that when they were 14 and they say, I tried everything. The more important thing is that these medications were also not tested on younger individuals, so you see how we do not know what the side effects on them could be. To end this on a positive note, there have been some observations that people taking GLP-1 medications that also suffer from an alcohol use disorder also experience benefits in terms of that, so they stop the excessive alcohol use. And I think this shows us again that we do not know enough about the human body and how it exactly functions, and it has not been yet found out how these two things are actually connected. But I hope that in the near future science figures out as to what is the connection between other addictive substances hormones and GLP-1. I hope that this kind of cleared up the topic for you, and again, this is not medical advice. I'm just discussing the topic. I'm not a medical professional to prescribe you or to not prescribe you any type of medication, but I think it was also for me interesting to go a bit more depth into the topic, since it is probably going to stay as the elephant in the room for a while. Thank you so much for watching, and if you enjoyed, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Leave down in the comments below if you would like me to do a video on a specific topic next time. Thank you again for being here with me today, and I'll see you in the next one.